Ever wonder what's really going on inside that phone or laptop you're using right now? It can feel a lot like magic, but I promise you it's not. Today we're going to demystify the computer by thinking of it just like a person. It's got a brain that thinks, a body that acts, and even a kind of soul that gives it a purpose. So let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the absolute basics, then we'll peek inside the computer's brain. After that, we'll talk about its body and soul and how it turns simple facts into something meaningful. Then we'll see how it impacts our world, and finally, how it all comes to life.
All right, let's dive right in. Section 1. What is a computer? You can think of this as our first handshake, our first impression of what this incredible machine is all about.
So, when you strip everything else away, a computer really only does three things. It takes in some input, it processes that input, and then it gives you an output. That's it. We call it the IPO cycle. Input, process, output. And that's the foundation for literally everything. You know, it's just like what you're doing right now. Your eyes take in the words on the screen. That's the input. Your brain processes what they mean. And that little aha moment of understanding, that's the output. See? Simple.
Now, let's zoom in on that process part of the cycle. That brings us to Section 2, inside the computer's brain. And yeah, every computer has a brain. We call it the Central Processing Unit, or for short, the CPU. This is the command center where all the heavy lifting, all the real thinking actually happens.
This tiny little chip is the engine for the entire system. And while we call it the brain, it's not just one single thing. You know how our brains have different areas for logic, creativity, and coordination? Well, the CPU is kind of like that. It's made up of a few specialized parts that all work together at mind-boggling speeds. Let's meet them.
Okay, so inside this brain, you've got three main players. First, there's the ALU, the Arithmetic Logic Unit. This is the math whiz. It handles all the calculations. Then you have the CU, or Control Unit. Think of this as the traffic cop or the project manager. It tells everything else what to do and when to do it. And finally, you've got registers. These are like the CPU's super-fast sticky notes, holding on to whatever piece of data it's working on at that very second.
So, we've got a brain. That's a great start. But a brain by itself can't really do much, right? It needs a body to interact with the world and a soul to give it purpose. And that brings us perfectly to Section 3, the body and the soul, or what you've probably heard of as hardware and software.
The difference here is actually pretty simple. Hardware is all the physical stuff you can literally reach out and touch. The monitor, the keyboard, the chips inside, that's the computer's body. Software, on the other hand, is all the invisible stuff. It's the set of instructions and programs that tell the body what to do. It's the thoughts, the personality. It's the soul of the machine.
Let's break that hardware down a little more. You've got input devices like your keyboard and mouse. These are basically the computer's senses. Then you have output devices like the screen or the speakers. That's its voice, how it communicates back to us. And of course there's memory, which is its ability to remember things both for the short term and the long haul.
Now for the soul. Software really comes in two main flavors. First is the system software, like Windows or Mac OS. This is the computer's core personality. It manages the whole show from behind the scenes. Then you have application software. That's your apps, things like Microsoft Word or your favorite game. These are like specific skills the computer has learned to help you get things done.
Okay, so our computer has a brain, a body, and a soul. But how does it actually make sense of anything? This is a huge step, which we'll cover in Section 4, From Facts to Meaning. It's all about the difference between data and information.
And this idea is so important. A computer takes in data, which is just a random jumble of raw facts, numbers, letters, symbols, with absolutely no context. Think of it like hearing a bunch of random musical notes. It's just noise. But then, the CPU processes that data, organizes it, and gives it context. And what comes out the other side is information, something meaningful and useful. It's like turning those random notes into a beautiful song.
So there we have it, a complete system, a brain, a body, a soul, and the ability to turn meaningless facts into useful information. So, what do we do with it? In Section 5, let's see what happens when we put this amazing machine to work in our world. This is why it all matters. Look at all this stuff: online services, entertainment, business, banking, education, healthcare, all of it, every single bit runs on that simple IPO cycle we talked about at the very beginning. Every app you use, every website you visit, is just a very sophisticated way of taking an input, processing it with hardware and software, and delivering a useful output.
And for our final section, number 6, bringing it all to life. We've talked about all the separate pieces of our person, so how do we actually wake them up and get them working together? Let's quickly walk through the power on sequence.
I know this looks really basic, but just think for a second about what's actually happening here. You connect the body's limbs and senses, you give it a source of energy, and when you push that on button, it's like the computer is taking its very first breath. The hardware wakes up, its core personality, the system software loads into memory, and the brain kicks into gear, bringing the whole thing to life, ready and waiting for your commands.
So from that one simple idea of input and output, we basically built a complete model of a computer, one with a brain, a body, and a soul. And this foundation, this way of thinking about it, applies to every single computer you will ever use, from the one in your hand right now to the biggest supercomputers on Earth.
We've pulled back the curtain. It's not magic. It's a tool, an incredibly powerful tool that's really just an extension of our own mind. So now that you understand how it works, the only question left is, what will you command it to do next?